Last week on Concepts and Legends.
Alper, how can we fit all of the stories James has into a single interview? Well, Alper, we can't.
What the hell are we going to do?
Relax, you loon.
And now for part 2 of our interview with James Arnold.
All sorts of things.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so my thoughts are, how do you want to approach this? Because I've never done a re-interview. So what were you thinking? Did you want to did you have questions for me to sort of re-ask now that you've had a chance to metacognate, or how do you want this to go down?
That's a really good question. I admit I hadn't quite thought about it all that far. I guess what I'm looking at right now is, so I took some notes, just kind of on my own thoughts and kind of thinking about the questions that you were asking and better ways that I could respond. Now, if you want to try and do supercut, that's super cool. Honestly, we can just say at the beginning, we can just say hey, yeah, we talked. Because honestly, I think one of the really interesting questions you asked really early on in our first conversation was how does writing play into all of this? How is it that I'm making it work? And what it came down to, the more I thought about it, was just a ridiculous amount of self-editing. Every single one of those articles that I wrote, man, I went through them time and time again. And I just kept asking myself, what am I actually trying to say here? Do I really need to go off on this tangent? Is that, what about this? What about that? Just this constant sense of can we do this not just a little bit better, but a lot better?
Your articles were never tangent. They were never prone to tangents. I mean, I know you say that you do that when you are in real life with somebody. You tend to do that in conversation, but your articles did not have any excess on fat on it.
Mercilessly scrubbed. Absolutely mercilessly scrubbed. I guarantee you the total word count went down by at least 40% by the time that I had gone through my initial edits.
And knowing from being a journalist myself, I'd imagine the pay was not extraordinary, right? Because it never is in those situations. And yet you did such an incredible amount of hard work that paid off in the end.
Yeah. And that to me has always been one of the things that is such a critical element for everything that I do and everything that I see in the work of other people that I admire is yes, of course, you have to ask the question, you have to figure out how is this going to work out? Where's the money? Blah, 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 numbers and finance and but when the focus, when the driving force becomes, how do we make this amazing? That's when the magic happens. No pun intended, but I'll take the credit. I come from, you were asking about how I kind of got into all of this. I come from what I can only casually describe as a ridiculous level of pedigree. My grandparents, my parents, everybody in my families, I mean, both sides are just absolutely incredible human beings at what they do.
No, you say pedigree. Do you mean that as an artist, or do you mean, because pedigree implies that there's sort of a similar theme going out through on, and I mean, hardworking is great. I mean, but it's not necessarily a pedigree, right?
Sure, but so here's the interesting thing. If you kind of like split the family tree and you look at like my father's side, you have my grandfather who was a master illustrator, one of the founding professors of photography at Rochester Institute of Technology. He was so good at matching color. George Eastman, like as in Eastman Kodak, they hired him to touch up photographs because he could match tone for tone the colors like it was nothing. Like he had that level of artistic sensibility to him that he was basically the analog version of Photoshop.
Like
And
he's like in musicians with perfect pitch. He sort of had perfect pitch, but for color.
yes, and he had this amazing creativity to him. He was, I mean, when he passed some time ago, I I think it's kind of testament to what an amazing human being was that he had. That he needed to have 3 funeral services because there were so many people and so many facets of his life that came out of the woodwork to celebrate his life because he was so dedicated to his craft and supporting others who became incredibly successful artists. So and that's one person. I mean, you look at my uncle who is a master jeweler. You look at my cousin who blows me out of the water in every single regard. Like her artwork is incredible.
And it's safe to say your family is artistically driven on a lot of instances, right?
Yeah. I mean, when you have a father who has a master's degree in music composition and also has the drive to be a construction contract worker, a property manager, and he's working on film, and he's looking at all these other, like every single person in my family. I mean, I often feel like the runt of the litter and that's the kind of pedigree I'm talking about. But then you look at my mom's side of the family, and you have people who are multiple people who are in the military. You have multiple people like, my uncle, the head of the firefighters union for many years in the state of Virginia. My maternal grandfather, who was a highly decorated officer in the U.S. Army, member of many prestigious organizations, this super combination of extreme creativity, but also like extreme drive and dedication to what is in front of you, the task that has been laid before you, and that's the foundation, right? So yeah, like it's crazy. Like a lot of times, like when we talk about like what drives us and what keeps us going and everything, like a lot of times I feel like I'm just trying to keep up with everything else that's going on in my family. I mean, for God's sake, my sister's a doctor, like a proper doctor. She has more, those crazy acronyms they get. She has more letters after her name than I have in my name.
You're doing pretty good yourself. I mean, I don't think that you should. I mean, I understand how you feel that way, but objectively, you're doing just fine. I'd say you're paying the bills as an artist, which is such an anomaly in modern day world and frankly in history, right? I mean, think about
something that I'm very thankful for. I'm insanely thankful for this opportunity that I get to do on a daily basis. And yeah, you definitely do get to have those moments, right? Like where you're kind of looking around thinking to yourself, like, all right, when somebody gonna lift the curtain and be like, nah, you don't actually get to do this for a living. Get back in line.
But you do get to do it. So, you definitely should not give yourself a hard time. It sounds like, maybe the only thing that I would say is you benefited from the combination of creativity and discipline that comes from your bloodlines. Like, that's cool. I mean, it's not even, and it doesn't necessarily even work out like that all the time for even if you have that in your background, because every so often things shift and whatnot, but you got lucky and the genetic dice rolled in your favor.
Yeah, I definitely had a very solid foundation. And you're right. Like there is a lot more to it, right? Are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000 hour rule and all that?
Yes. I am.
Okay. For those of you who are not, the TLDR is that there was a study conducted by Malcolm Gladwell where he was trying to do a high level analysis of commonalities between people in all sorts of fields, all sorts of times and places, who had attained a level of mastery that was commonly agreed that is like, yes, this person is doing something on a different level.
Yeah, like it would be, for lack of a better word, somebody who would be considered a genius of their trade or their careers or whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody who had just kind of gotten to this next level. And the major commonality that he isolated, among other things, and kind of the crux of many TED Talks and whatnot, is the 10,000 hour rule, and essentially says that with 10,000 hours ish of dedicated practice and focus, a person can ascend this level of skill.
Yeah, they can achieve the mastery level after doing the 10,000 hours.
Right. And I went through that. I heard about this, and like so many people, I got hooked because I had this moment where I had been kind of rolling along, just kind of doing my thing, very, very much in the more like placid Forrest Gump type of way, right? Like where it's just like, I'm just going to let life happen and everything will be fine as long as I make enough money to buy video games. And that is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I applaud people who are not as crazed as some of us get when it comes to that sort of thing.
Were you really like that though? I mean, it just seems so, like, I find it hard to wrap my head around the fact that you were laissez-faire when you have had such a level of success and such a level of dedicated like focus on what you're doing that you somehow goofballed your way into it.
I had a lot of lost time to make up for, I will tell you. I played a lot of EverQuest. I played a lot of Disgaea. I played a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. Video games are actually incredibly important to me. They're kind of the emotional core that I can go back to when I'm having a hard time. And I mean, I'm still to the point where I can pull up the Final Fantasy VII soundtrack anytime I want, and it is the ultimate Pavlovian, like, everything's fine. Like,
your safe space, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that said, like, the foundation is there. You got to build on it.
So when you say that you had a lot of lost time, so I'm take it that you meant that for a long time you maybe only were playing video games and not actively pursuing things of your career?
Yeah, I mean, like, I dabbled here and there. Like, I was kind of in the boat of like, I don't know, like, what's life? What am I trying to do here? Like, I didn't really have I didn't have any fire. Like, I wasn't particularly angry about anything. I wasn't particularly driven towards anything. There wasn't any like sense of urgency or anything like that. Like, it was just, whatever it was, like, and that was just kind of it.
And so then Malcolm Gladwell, I imagine, so then you read his book, and that was what turned you, that's what the corner was?
I think more of what it was that at that particular point, I had gone through college. I gotten both my degrees. I have a degree in computer animation and a degree in interactive digital graphic design. And I did good. Like I got A's. I graduated with high honors and everything like that. But like at no point in any of that did I have this feeling that I was really doing everything that I could. I knew how to get through every day. And that was like, again, like that was at the time that was enough. But there, at that point, like, I'm getting into my early 20s and I'm having this sense of like, is there something else? Like, is there something bigger that I should be working towards? Is there something that can like start to give meaning to this skill set and all of this work that I've put in so far?
They call it the quarter life crisis, is what that is for a lot of early 20 somethings, because you're not old enough to really be secure the way you are in your 30s, but you're also not young enough to be, carefree like you were when a teenager. So you're kind of at the quarter life crisis.
I like that. That is very much along the lines of what I was experiencing. I think what happened was like I became exposed to this ideal, and it just kind of gave focus to what had already been sort of bubbling up for quite some time, and so I was like, that's it. I'm in. I'm going to do it. I figured it out. I started doing math. I'm like, I'm going to do 10,000 hours. I'm going to do a drawing every day, blah, 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 blah. And I did. Like for 3 years, I literally did a drawing every day. And most of them were terrible, but that's fine. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, you don't become a master from the beginning. You become it from after 10,000 hours.
Chuck Jones, one of the great animators and artists of our time.
So good. Oh my God, Chuck Jones! I could talk about him for days.
Good. You and I, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. I can tell.
So good.
One of my favorite little bits about him was they talked about the school one of the schools that he went to, one of the art colleges, and the way that they put it, their version of the 10,000 hour rule is that every artist is filled with amazing drawings. The problem is that there's this clog of about 10,000 really bad drawings that are between you and the good stuff. So we're here to help you empty it out and get through that. Like that was basically their version, and I love it. I carry that one with me.
Yeah, Chuck Jones, he just got better as time got on. Like he just became more Chuck Jones.
It's super true. And a lot of times I see that in the arc of artists that I know, in the arc of artists that I admire and that I've studied, like Chuck Jones, where they're constantly returning to who they were when they were younger with the sensibilities that they've accrued as they've gotten older. Mm-hmm. And that is super inspiring to me. That is one of the reasons why I am trying to continue on my own path to keep pressing towards this improved vision of some of the things that I felt and some of the things that I enjoyed. Earlier I said I had a lot of lost time to make up for. I don't think it was lost. I think the fanatic in me would like to say that it was like I was born working. No, you weren't. There were times when you just got to enjoy and take in and just kind of like feast your mind on these amazing things. And
so you didn't you didn't really like, it wasn't like some people, video games become a crippling problem that makes them neglect things that they should not be neglecting. That was not the case for you?
No, not at all. I mean, like, you have to understand too, like I'm 39. Like when I talk about video games, I'm talking about the actual Nintendo Entertainment System. Like,
I mean, I'm 40. Trust me, I know what you're talking about.
All right, cool. These games were never intended to be played for weeks and months and years, the way a lot of modern games are.
Like, yeah, you couldn't live long enough during these games. They would just kill you.
No, exactly. And at some point you would just get so frustrated with it that you're like, the hell with this thing. I'm going outside anyways.
Rage quit.
Yep. And the Nintendo was perfect for that. But yeah, kind of like getting back to where I was that I had this idea in my head that I was going to become a Magic the Gathering card artist. I had a conversation with Mike Linneman, and he and I were very good friends. We talked all the time. We were both writers at Gathering Magic, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
he's an incredibly smart guy. He knows everything about the industry that we exist in.
I know Mike very well.
Yeah. And I told him right out, I was like, Mike, I want in. What do I do? And so he gave me the answer. He's like, first you got to draw a guy, then you got to draw a guy on a horse, then you got to draw two guys fighting, then you got to draw two guys on. He basically just kind of like walked me through the traditional path of a illustrator to become a card artist, because that's what works. And so I'm like, okay, got it, right. I took down notes and I started trying and drawing and practicing and everything, and it just wasn't working. Like I bashed my head against that wall. I kid you not, for years, and I just kept trying, and I just kept telling myself, like, it's just practice. All you got to do is keep going. All you got to do is keep going. It's year after year after year.
It is true. I mean, and I've heard other artists say that similar situations where there was rejection after rejection after rejection, and then there wasn't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I had that moment. I remember it very clearly. I was sitting on a porch in Maryland, and I had just finished drawing a tree, and it was terrible. Like, it was a terrible tree. It wasn't very good at all. And I'd been drawing for years and years and years at this point. And I just looked at it and I like threw my notepad on the ground, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous. I can't draw. And it's the whole evil downward spiral of, oh, woe is me, poor little me. And then and thankfully, in the middle of this ridiculous moment, some little part of my brain clicked over and said, buddy, have you considered being a graphic designer for fantasy art? What? Yeah. They need graphic designers too.
I'd imagine just as much, if not more so, because I don't know if there is such a ready group available. I mean, maybe there is, but it just seems like that's a harder thing to find, because you don't want 1,000 different people doing graphic design for one product. You want maybe a very small team to do that.
Or yeah, exactly. And so I picked my notepad back up, or my sketchbook, and I did the math. Because at that point, let's see, it'd been about 5 years since I made this giant declaration to myself, like, I'm going to go do the things. And I was probably like 7,000 or 8,000 hours into the whole illustration thing. And again, just wasn't feeling it. And I was like, well, where am I as a graphic designer though? And I did some very loose math. And at that point, sitting on that porch in Maryland, I had about 40,000 hours under my belt.
Graphic design.
Full-time graphic designer for higher education for 11 years.
Okay.
And when I say full-time, I don't mean 40 hours a week. I mean probably closer to 60 hours a week, because we worked like dogs.
Fuller time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm like, well, okay. And then I pick it back up, and I'm like, what if we made a tree icon? And it was like my brain just like lit up like Christmas. It was just like, oh, well, we could do this, and we could do, twist the thing and do that. And the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, everything makes sense now. Great. That was when I started writing those articles on expansion symbols for Magic the Gathering, because suddenly I'm like, wait a minute, this is the coolest thing ever. I should pay more attention to it.
And you understood the reverse engineering of it because of the fact you discovered the way to do it yourself.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of the interesting thing, right? Because this is back in the day before I had access to the archives or anything like that, which, by the way, was one of the ultimate, like, the heavenly host singing as the gates open, and I get on the server for the first time at Wizards of the Coast, and I'm like, there's every expansion symbol ever made, and it's
So
the
there's like
native
a big place
vectors.
I'm sorry, there's a big place like on the server that you can go to for references. Like that's what you're saying?
Well, there is now. I built it, but yeah.
Well, hot damn. Well,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Mhm.
That's great. And so
Yeah.
you got a chance to see that. And then, I mean, and again, your expansion symbols are just fantastic. I've always thought that they like jumped out. And but another thing that we really didn't get into, and that I think that we kind of glossed over, and I'm embarrassed to say that I did that, but your framing for the cards as well. There are so many that you've worked on, pretty much all of them for the last, recent years. And so I'd like to talk about some of like the differences between like, how do you go about designing a Phyrexian frame versus a frame that's for a planeswalker or something along those lines? Like, where does that, do you have like a meeting with other, creatives and say, here's what we're thinking, because they're just so unique?
So this is perfect. You're beautiful. Thank you. You played into exactly what I wanted to talk about. And one of the things that we really didn't cover in our first talk. I have had so many incredible people that I worked with at Wizards. It blows my mind to think about all of the genius minds that I got to interact with on a daily basis. This is the before times.
Yeah.
This is when we were all in one space. And you know what? There really was something missing when we went remote.
It's sad. That's human. As humans, we're meant to be face to face. It's how we survive.
It's true. And it wasn't just that all of the people that I interacted with on a day-to-day basis were experts in their field, and they were my friends. They were the types of people. I realized this one day when we got lunch for the department, and everybody's just kind of like chilling in line, waiting their turn for tacos or whatever it is. And somebody made a joke referencing Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The whole line knew every single word. It was poetry to just watch this huge group of people, line for line, the knights who say knee. And I just realized, it was like, because like I said, like I worked in higher education for the longest time. Great industry to work in. Lot of like really like disparate like personalities and expertise and everything. But like every once in a while, like when you work at a big enough place, you'll find those like one or two people, just one or two, where you're like, oh, they get me. Okay, cool. We can talk about Chuck Jones. We can talk about, anything that we want. We're buddies now.
That nerd tribalism that happens, and you're just like, oh, you're my kind of nerd.
Yes. Everybody in the building was that kind of nerd. It was amazing. And these were the people that I interacted with on a day-to-day basis, and they gave me incredible levels of insight. And there was a fierce spirit of collaboration that everybody brought to the table, where I could take frames are a great example, because frames honestly, like of all the things that I've ever worked on, frames, I would say, were the ones where I had the least level of personal ownership over what was going on, because there were so many considerations that went into everything that builds a Magic the Gathering frame. Even just the aesthetic treatments, like where nothing is changing mechanically or anything like that. Like if you think about the the Kaldheim, the sort of the heavy metal, black metal frames. We're not changing anything. Like it's still a giant god that does something awesome, and they do the exact same awesome things. But there's so many things there, even in that very, very narrow footprint. There are so many people that need to look at that frame and say, this is hitting the creative targets that we're looking for. This is something that we can produce, because I have to be able to hand off all my work to technical artists who then take those frames and rebuild them from scratch and put art in them and figure out how the white underprint process is going to work so that they can be foiled and look super sweet when they are, and they always do, because they're amazing people. And then on top of that, you have the people who are, the communicating with the outside world who want to have eyes on this and say, the people who can raise flags and say, we really shouldn't do this because blah, blah, blah. Or have we considered what would happen if this group were to have an opportunity to weigh in on this, or so forth and so on. There's so many things that go on, and that is the most specific, or I'm sorry, the smallest, like the most narrow slice possible. And then you go over to, like, say, the mutate frame, where suddenly this has gameplay implications. Oh boy. Like, now we're talking about, like, taking that group of people and basically tripling it, because you're talking about the gameplay designers, you're talking about the people who manage the rules, you're talking about the editor. Well, I mean, the editors, by the way, true facts. Editors for Magic the Gathering are the most insanely smart people on the planet. They, yeah.
You say
okay.
Editors. What do you mean, the people who do the editing of the written words, or is this just a general sort of job they do as editing?
It's everything. I mean, like they are essentially the gatekeepers of whether or not a card makes it through to the point where it's being sent off to production. So they are looking at literal everything. They have to have a holistic working knowledge of the rules, the art, the frames, how all of those things play together. They're looking for technical details that may have snuck through, like let's say one of the automation processes had a hiccup, and like one of the mana symbols got changed by mistake. Mm-hmm. The editors are sort of the first and last defense against that. There are other people like who do QA, and certainly lots of other incredible folk in the production side of things who also go through and meticulously comb through everything that's made. But when it comes down to it, the editors are the ones who have to see the big picture.
That sounds extremely stressful. There's so much writing on that.
I proofed cards for like a year and a half when I started at Wizards, and I can confirm that the stress is real, because one of the things that I think drives a lot of us, and certainly me, is that we love the game, and the thought of doing anything that would be negative or harm the game or give people a bad experience, like that. Oh, like I get pins and needles just thinking about it. It's like, oh, I don't like that at all. And yeah, like when you are in that role, you find yourself doing like ridiculous things. Like I remember I was proofing some cards for Commander, and one of the Commander products, and there was a sequence of mana symbols on a Sultai card where I was like, that doesn't look like the normal, green, blue, black. What goes on here? And they're like, oh, we're redoing the sequence on that or something. It was something like so minute, and I was just like, okay, everything's fine. You just have this moment of like, oh, I don't want to make bad magic cards. Please don't let me make bad magic cards.
Would they like make an announcement to you, like if there are going to be like a change and say like, okay, like for example, let's talk about the Phyrexian card frame. Like, who sits down with you and has the first initial discussion of how you're going to do the Phyrexian frame for Kaldheim for Vorinclex?
For Vorinclex, that's actually a good one, because at that point I'd been working at the company for a number of years.
Yeah,
probably 3.5 years or so. One of the things that you kind of learn, like anybody learns when you're working at a company, is you learn the players. You learn who you go to and who you ask the questions. You know who has the answers. So for me, it's a conversation where a project manager would let me know, like, hey, this is going to be happening. You should start thinking about ABC XYZ. Sometimes, the creative director, Jessalyn Zillow, would kind of key me in even a little bit earlier than that, because she's awesome and she knows that I'm the kind of person where, kind of going back to our original theme, the longer I have to think about something, the better result I can get. So she was always, she's like everybody there. She's always had my back, and she's just an incredible human being. So with the Phyrexians, this was something that I kind of knew, I kind of had bubbling for quite some time, because like, it's not something that you do lightly, right? Like this is some serious stuff. Like,
they're iconic.
Like, bring it back. Yeah, this is the big bad. This is Vorinclex. This is everything. So I started thinking about, like, who do I need to talk to? What are the constraints? Because ultimately that is what it comes down to with a Magic the Gathering card frame. Like, when you're doing these specialist treatments, it's not necessarily what does the card do, it's what doesn't it do? Because once you start answering those questions and you start sort of closing off doors in terms of what the card is not going to do, then you have options. Because suddenly, like let's say, we'll take a step away from the Phyrexians for a second. Let's say they're working on a frame that is only going to be for artifacts. Oh, that's cool. Well, suddenly I don't need to worry about planeswalkers, right? I don't need to worry about artifact creatures, because we're equipment. We'll say it's equipment, and not the germ tokens either, because there's always a little angle there. It's only equipment, so we don't have to worry about the power toughness box. Well, suddenly that whole area opens up, and I can make assumptions about what it is that card can look like, and what becomes malleable. What can I play with? Where does that break down? With the Phyrexians, we're talking about Vorinclex, and I'm like, okay, well, I know he's legendary, I know he's a praetor, so forth and so on. Like, there's a number of considerations that are already kind of spoken for. And at that point, you start asking questions, lots and lots of questions, like what languages are going to be supported? What kind of art aspect are we talking about? Like, are we going to blow this out and have it be like a full thing or a full art aspect where the text box has some translucency to it? Is this going to have a watermark, like old school style? Like, how far are we going to push the aesthetic? Like, all of these things start coming into play. And depending on what that question is, at that point, I knew who I could go to for the answer.
Who was that?
Well, so what's the question, right?
Well, the question would be, who's the resident Phyrexian expert?
Hi. No. So there were a number of experts when it came down to it. Actually, there, in terms of the story and how the Phyrexians were going to play into everything that was going down at that point. Doug Beyer would be a great person to go to, a master craftsman and storyteller who is kind of the keeper of the keys when it comes to where's it all going? Like what's the big target? If we were talking about the aesthetic of it, Cynthia Shepard, just another absolutely incredible person that was the art director for the set. If it was a marketing question, there was an architect, Mark Hagan. The list goes on, and that was always the cool thing. That I always really appreciated about Wizards was that people, even though we were all working like crazy, and even though we were all like under just this incredible level of pressure, everybody was kind and everybody was generous with their time. Like, no matter how much these people had going on in their lives, like, and professionally and otherwise, if I came to their desk and I was like, hey, we need to talk, they're like, yeah, let's talk. Done. It always came down to that. And I trusted them. And I trusted the opportunities that I had, where I used to have a giant whiteboard behind my desk. And one of the things that I would do is, one of my favorite things to do is I would just do printouts of everything that I was working on and just pen them up. It was a big magnetized whiteboard, like floor to ceiling.
You have any photos of that?
What's that?
Like those images? I'd love to see that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Some of the work in progress stuff.
Or is it probably not? It's probably NDA stuff thrown in there.
I mean, honestly, like a lot of it was probably just like slightly more derpy versions of the things that you guys ended up seeing, like,
which is still cool to see. I mean,
yeah. I mean, for real, it is. I'm not sure, to be honest. I know that when I left, I made sure that all of my work was archived. So if it existed digitally, it's still there. I will say that. But
now, a quick question. So, like, and one that I wanted to ask. So what eventually? I mean, you were with Wizards for so long, and then you parted ways, amicably.
Mm-hmm.
What was the decision for that to happen?
Okay, so we'll finish the whiteboard thing real quick, then we'll come around to that. Because I love that whiteboard, and I
Let's talk about the whiteboard.
Yeah. So the whiteboard was basically, what it came down to was that it was it became a discussion hub, and people could just walk by and take a look at what was going on, and if they had thoughts and they didn't feel comfortable saying them out loud, they just write them on the whiteboard. Sometimes they would just walk by and just like nod quietly, and other times they would walk right up to me and be like, what are you doing with it? Aaron Forsyth. Have you ever met Aaron in real life?
I have not. No, I have not had the good fortune.
Okay. Aaron is like 6'80", and me at a paltry level 6'2". I'm like, hey Aaron, what's up? and he would walk by every once in a while, and he would see something that I did, and if it tickled him, or if he had questions or anything, he had no hesitation to come over and be like, let's talk about that for a second. I was like, yeah, let's do that. You kind of get to pay it back, right? And it was cool. Like everything that kind of was represented in that collaborative process of working at Wizards was kind of embedded in the culture of that wall. There was always somebody from support or marketing or a designer or an artist or whatever. They always walked by. They always had ideas. They were like, what if you did this? What about that? Like, that was the cool thing. And like, yes, at the end of the day, like, I do feel a deep sense of ownership over the things that I made, but it would be insane to say that, like, I did this thing, the end. Like, right. No, it was never like that. I had I had just this amazing group of people supporting me, and hopefully I was able to support in turn.
I don't think that you would be able to last at Wizards as long as you did if you were not providing the same kind of support that you were being offered.
Yeah, one of the things that I've had a number of like really excellent teachers in my life, and I mean that in the strict academic sense, but I also just mean in terms of like being a living example of the quality that I see and I react to.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of them were good. One of the graphic designers that I worked with some time ago was essentially she had a tendency to hold her emotions hostage, and you didn't get to see the nice side of her unless you agreed with every single decision that she made in terms of her graphic designs. This is well before Wizards, by the way. And I saw the effect that had on people, and I saw how as time went on, people did whatever they could to work with other graphic designers, and it was one of those moments like where you legitimately do learn things,
learning what not to do.
Yeah, because you can, even though it can be insanely difficult sometimes, you can always be kind. You can always take 2 seconds and just breathe and be like, okay, what can we do? Right?
Yeah. And it sounds like she was using emotional terrorism to get results. That's never going to be a good thing to do.
Right. And that was a lesson that I learned a long time ago, and one that I keep with me now, and certainly one that I was able to use at Wizards constantly, where it's like, yeah, TikTok, we're all under the gun. We got to get this done. We got to get things through. But can I take 2 extra seconds to just legitimately ask you how you're doing today? Like, and also to just be respectful when somebody has an opinion that doesn't match with my own, and to say like yes, there is another way of looking at this. Is there something that I can take from this? Like, are they right? Like, am I just completely off base? Like that, and that happens plenty of times. That happens daily, honestly. Like when it comes to my profession, like I am so grateful when somebody internal to the process points out a critical misgiving or potential failure or anything like that, because that just becomes a point of opportunity where suddenly we're like, oh, we can fix this before it even becomes a problem. Let's do this. Like, yeah, and by the way, thank you. It's such a gift. It is such a gift. And there's all sorts of like crazy stuff. Like sorry, I have to go back to the whiteboard one last time because this is my favorite whiteboard story. Are you familiar with the Mowu shirt?
Yes, I've heard. I mean, I've heard of it, and I don't know if I've seen it, but I've read about it. Yeah.
So that was me via my wife. My wife and I are out on a walk. Oh, speaking of people who have supported me through the years, my God, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. Carolyn and I are out for a walk one day, and you're just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. You're enjoying just a beautiful summer day in Seattle, and she's like, oh, what would be awesome if you did a Mana shirt, but it's Mowu, and you replace the O with just like a big, pupper paw print. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's real good. And just kind of tuck that one away. Fast forward, I'm just kind of getting set up, doing my warm-up sketches, whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do this. It took 10 minutes, whatever. I put it up on the board like I do. And I think about an hour goes by, tops. And another unsung hero of Magic, I feel, Mark Purvis, comes around the corner pulling the Mowu paper. And he's like, this is good. I'm like, yeah. He's like, are we making this? I'm like, well, I literally just designed that. So no.
Not yet, no.
But we can. He's like, I'll be right back. He disappears for like 20 minutes and he comes back. He's like, all right, you'll get an email asking for a file. Just hook him up. I'm like,
Wow. So
I love it. I love everything about it.
Do you know the machinations of what happened? Did he tell you like who he goes to? And then that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a feeling Mark has many years more experience at the company that I do. So I have to imagine his version of it is essentially what I was just describing to you about the Phyrexian frames times 100, because he knows exactly who to talk to. And he knows exactly who is going to, make the connection over to, I think it's Legion is the supplier, and just, and is also built up enough equity with people where he can say like, look at this. Isn't this great? And they're like, yeah, actually it is. And then he's like, let's pull the trigger. Let's make it happen. Done. Okay.
That's impressive because it sounds like when you have such pull after having such experience there, you probably have enough power to just walk in and say, this is a really good idea, and people are going to go, okay, yeah, well, you've never, you don't steer us wrong, so go ahead.
Yeah. And that to me is one of the very impressive things about him, and many of the people that I interacted with there, was that they do have the ability to play God, but they don't. Like he specifically was always very, very intentional about when and how he interacted with the people around him, because he cares. Like he cares very deeply about the game, and you could tell just in the way that he carried himself, the way that he communicated with other people, and certainly with the way that he made his decisions. Just a deeply compassionate human being, and just an absolute love of the game, and somebody that I really respect. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is like you can command fear, but you earn respect. And he was the kind of person who earned respect every single day.
Right. That's sort of, I think, if you become a person who's able to play God, that is going to be because you've managed to earn that respect. And if you are using that power to bring the game to a better place, then that's great,
Yeah. I mean, that honestly, like that, it really kind of blows me away when I think of like all of the people through the years who became stewards of the game for one reason or another, through one capacity or another, and just gave it everything that they had, and did so selflessly, so that the game could continue and grow and get stronger. And that is people who I was able to meet and interact with for my time there. That is kind of written in the legacy of all of the things that you and I grow up with. It's interesting. Like I always kind of thought of myself, like when I was at the company, I always kind of thought of myself as a visitor. Like that to me has always been a very important ideal to strive towards, is the thought of like, I'm only here for a time, and I want to be respectful, I want to be helpful, and I certainly want to leave things better than I found them. And being a student of magic, and being the quiet little kid with pretty bad asthma, spending summers indoors because he couldn't go outside, sitting cross-legged on his bedroom floor listening to Metallica and sorting through cards because that was the day. That became a very deep part of who I am, and I always wanted to meet those people, to just say hi, to have those moments where I'm like, I don't know if you know this, but I am your biggest fan. Richard Witters, a concept artist for D&D, worked on Magic for a number of years. He worked on Magic during Return to Ravnica. Mm-hmm. He was one of the designers. Well, I mean, he was one of the people who designed several of the redos for the Ravnica guild symbols. Return to Ravnica was my return set. I had been away from the game for a very long time. And I walk into a game store 1 week before, and I look at all of this promotional packaging as a graphic designer of some experience at that point. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I'm like, this is amazing. What did you like in the good way? What mm-hmm. did you do with my game? Like, it's pretty, like, it's so pretty. And it's not to say that it wasn't before, but just like the iconography, like literally just looking at the guild symbols for the first time, like the new built up guild symbols. And I'm like, are you for real? Like, what is this beautiful madness that is before me? I went to the Return to Ravnica pre-release on a Friday night, played my heart out, came home, and I was up, true story, until 5 a.m. on my computer, rebuilding all of the Ravnica guild symbols in Vector, because I was just absolutely obsessed with what I was seeing. I was like, how is it that they were able to double the number of symbols, like from the classic Wooburg, and just give me this menagerie of in-world identities that I can somehow identify with, and I'm just excited and I want to know more. And for God's sake, how did they get all of those stupid little key runes on the Azorius thing? Oh my God.
Right, yeah.
So I figured out how they did it, or at least I thought I figured out how they did it. Fast forward 5-ish years, and I walk into the Dungeons and Dragons pit. They're the 2 rows of desks, designers, artists, everybody's there, and I was like, I knew Richard, like I'd met him a number of times, and I was like, Richard, I'm working on a new Ravnica set, and we're going to need guild symbols. And he got a little nervous on me, right? Because he's like, oh no, he's looking for my sketches. He's looking for stuff that we probably didn't hang on to, but whatever. Because one of the things that didn't exist when I was working on Ravnica Allegiance and Guilds of Ravnica was a new version of the guild symbols in Vector. And somehow this beautiful maniac of a human being had managed to, we're talking Azorius specifically, he drew that by hand.
Are you serious?
I'm just like, oh, okay. So you can just do that. Well, yeah.
You are able to, like, your geometry as a person.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's really crazy.
Now, granted, Richard has been drawing steadily for a very long time, and his skills, which are considerable, again, they talk about earning it one day at a time. He's put in the time. Like, this is no accident.
That's madness, though. I mean, it's just the fact that it's you, because you have to have a symmetry that's mathematical. I mean, and to the naked eye, if you asked me, I'd say there's no way in hell that was hand drawn.
Yeah, exactly. Now, your boy, on the other hand, it's not Richard Witters. So what did I do? I figured out that if I built every single law glyph or law rune and built them in a straight line, all 3 of the concentric circles, if I built them in a straight line and turned them into a brush in Illustrator and then applied that brush to a circle, I could perfectly reproduce what Richard had been able to do just by drawing the thing. So I had this beautiful moment where I was like, yeah, I'm working on the Azorius thing. And he's like, oh man, he goes, I'm sorry, I don't really keep, my stuff for that long. Maybe you can go talk to Jefferson or somebody in archives or whatever. I'm like, no, it's cool, bro. I just want you to know that, like, when you did that, however many years ago that was, you lit a young graphic designer's brain on fire. And he stayed up way later than he should have, recreating it. And I'm a big fan.
That's sweet.
And it was so good.
And so would you say, out of do you have any examples of, say, like maybe an expansion symbol or symbols, some of the frames that you did that you would say you would consider some of your greatest hits, the ones that you were most proud of if you had to pick?
All right, so expansion symbols, like I love them all. They're all my babies. We had talked before. I have a fierce love of knights and armor and all of those wonderful medieval things. So all of the commander shields are just absolutely like that's my happy place. Like if you want to pay me to sit down and draw you some shields, we can talk for sure. I think honestly, like one of my favorites was actually from the vault, Transform. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was just a wonderful example of, again, going back to the idea of collaboration, right? Because I had been playing with like all of these different symbols for like, what does it mean to transform? But we're not using the traditional transform symbol. Okay, so let's start thinking about, where are these cards in the set coming from? Okay, they're Innistrad. So now we're talking about this very specific, or mostly Innistrad. I guess there are some Ixalan ones in there. It's, we're starting to get into this more specific like day-night iconography. Right. Okay, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And then something, there's something about the creative process that I just absolutely love when you have that moment where you're like, now you could we do that? And so I walk over to Mark Winter's desk, who was the AD for that. And I'm like, Mark, is there anything to stop us from flipping the symbol? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what if it was dark on the left side and then dark on the right side on the other side of the card? And he has this moment and he's like, we need to talk to some people. So we just kind of go on this little tour. Like this was very, very early on. So this was actually kind of my little introduction to the collective decision-making process that would go on there, where it was like everybody who had some level of stakeholder or involvement, or certainly expertise to loan to this, would be part of that process of just like, hey, I just want you to know, we're going to do something we've never done before. Y'all cool with that? Like if you're going to pull the e-brake, like now's the time, like somebody stop me, for God's sake, somebody stop me. And as it turned out, like it took a non-zero amount of effort to make it work, but it was certainly possible because we did it. And I loved the moment on Reddit when somebody, like 2 milliseconds after the reveal, was like, oh my God, they flipped the expansion symbol. I'm like, wow, these guys are awesome. Like it was just that moment of like, oh, I hope somebody sees. Oh, they already saw it. Sweet.
That's great.
Yeah. And that was a favorite of mine. I love the Ultimate Masters. I lovingly refer to as Skullfinity. I took some extra time over winter break that year, and I remember that giant stack of papers, just going through it, because like finding the exact angle to arc the infinity symbol as it fit into the skull, that was just like trial and error, like 101. Just like, not that one, but that one's closer. Oh, we went too far and now it's even worse. Oh dear. Okay, back to square one. Do it again and again. And you know, that to me is like one of the really cool things about the time that I was able to spend there, and is that, you know, we did have some time to kind of go through that highly iterative process that separates the good from the great. And yeah, like if you were, most people, the casual observer, if they were to see, I don't know, 20 generations of Skullfinity in a row, and you ask them what's the difference, they're like, there's a difference? I thought they were just 20 copies. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, because at that point, you know, you're talking about like literal changes that are being made based on the behavior of ink as it hits the card.
Right.
So yeah, it is minuscule to a level that is just defies reason and logic, and that's kind of my jam. Let's see. The guild kits, the Ravnica guild kits, where I got to actually take the guild symbols and turn them into not only the expansion symbols, but the laser, I don't know if they use lasers, the cut into the spin downs.
Yeah, that's awesome and amazing, and also the actual interior artwork that you did for it. Now, those like the fonts for like say the Gruul, is that hand designed? And then how much of like how incredibly like intense is that? And then have to recreate that in another language.
That was actually one of my favorite things to do. And yeah, it was all hand drawn.
That's awesome, because that looks, again, like to somebody who's a layman like me, that looks to me like it was generated, not just drawn. So good job.
Thank you. And yeah, it was super fun, right? Because it's what was it, like burn, smash, fight, win, or something like that? Like yeah, it's so first off, like we're talking about a very limited scope of work here, right? And then there was the other side of it, where it's just like being a Gruul head myself. Like, it was super easy to find the motivation to be like, yeah, today we're doing the Italian version of burn, fight, smash, win. Like, great, let's make it happen. Let's do this. The super tricky one was kanji, because you know, being a non-romantic language, that goes immediately outside the bounds of what I'm capable of reading. Now, thankfully, I worked with a number of people, not only in Magic, but in Duel Masters, the other amazing TCG that Wizards of the Coast makes, who very much are you know, native speakers and can read and let me know. So I would literally make a bunch of designs, walk them over to the right people, and say, hey, which of these is the most legible to you? And just, you know, having that immediacy of being able to consult somebody who knows, like they actually know, and just say, please help me be better. Like that, you know, that's all that I really want to do. And that was always a gift that I look back on.
Now tell me though, I mean, I know that you're not with Wizards as a staff member anymore, but I can't bear the idea that you're not doing the expansion symbols, because I love your expansion symbols so much. So what brought about the decision to go down a different path? What was that about?
It was, there's a lot of different things that contributed to that. Like there was no one point where I'm like, that's it, I'm out.
Yeah,
we're done here.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of it was, you know, at the point that I made the decision, I had been isolated, as we all had, from COVID for a year and a half, something like that, way too long. And as the days go by and you don't have those fun little moments, those little conversations and stuff, like you start living in a different version of the world, not a better one, not a worse one, just a different one.
Yeah.
And I think part of what it was that I was realizing that I only have so much that I can contribute. Like this is the full honesty here. Like I feel like as a creative, there's always going to be things that I can do. There's always going to be expertise that I can lend based on what I've been through and what I'm thinking. But magic thrives on innovation. And the thing that keeps that fresh is new minds, new ideas, new perspectives and directions. I was definitely getting to the point where I'm like, I can do a better job taking other people's designs and getting them tweaked so that they can become the new facet of the game. One of the things that started happening, and this is by no means a negative at all. Like I feel like this was something that needed to happen. But when you kind of pull back to, let's say, perfect example, Midnight Hunt. The Harvesttide frame, the special, that frame was all designed mostly designed by another artist. And my job then became to take her artwork, kind of knit it back together, figure out, because you know, one of the things is like you're commissioning this crazy new frame from an artist who doesn't play Magic, or I don't believe plays Magic, and certainly doesn't have the decades and decades of like, wow, you got to make sure that you leave room for this thing here, and you know, just like all of
There's
those.
no way to know that ahead of time, really. It's
right.
You have to luck yourself into that, basically.
Right. So, but that's no reason why that person shouldn't be able to work on frames or do concept artwork for frames and so forth and so on. And that was very successful. Like that project was, to me, a great collaboration. And it was crazy because she and I never communicated directly. Like I was literally just taking black and white artwork from her and figuring out how to make it work. Now, thankfully, you know, we're talking about leaves and twigs and stuff like that. So there's certainly a lot of nebulous area. Like there's a lot of flex space right there, right? And it was so successful that they wanted to do it more. And it was fine because honestly, like at that point, I personally had become a bottleneck in the process, because as the sole person in charge of frames, or at least up until a point, there's only so much, like even working way harder, like there's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
And it gets to the point where it's like, they, you know, when you look at the proliferation of frames and special treatments that go into the game moving forward, and it keeps going up, it can, you know, one person can only do so much, and it is necessary to revamp the process so that multiple channels are now open to push things forward. And that's where you get the Harvesttide frames. That's where you get those cool black and white frames. You get the double feature frames, like all of those things. Like those were all being developed concurrently by different brains, and it was great. Like it was actually really impressive to see it all coming together.
So from what I understand, you made the decision to step back because you knew it would be that's what's good for the game.
I mean, it was okay. So let's say the process was already in place. Like the game was already moving ahead with all of that. My decision was more along the lines of like, is this what I want to be doing? It's just that simple. It's like, I, at that point, like I had almost 5 years under my belt, and I was looking at like, what do the next 5 years look like? And it's not to say that they're bad, that the outlook looked bad or anything like that. It was exciting. It was a lot of work. I'm never afraid of that. But like, it was just something where I was like, maybe there's something else. Maybe I can take this in a different direction, just for my own self. One of the things that happened when we were isolated was, I hurt myself like really, really badly. I had a herniated disc in my back.
Oh,
Yeah, my spine is garbage. It's absolute garbage. But for about 2 weeks, about a year ago, just about a year ago, I did not sleep. I would nap for about an hour and a half and wake up in excruciating pain.
geez.
And after this, and this went on for 2 weeks, and as things got worse in my own head, as you would expect, I started thinking to myself, I'm like, is this it? Like am I actually like on my way out? Like what's going on here?
Is that bad?
Well, yeah, I mean, it really was.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, you can't say that we didn't try. Can't say that we didn't have fun. Is there anything else that we would like to do though? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, there are some other things I would like to do. And just, I realized that if I didn't take the initiative to redirect, that it was just never going to happen. So that was part of the deal that I made with myself, was that I was like, we're gonna open up the doors. We're gonna see what's on the other side. And I will tell you, like 6 months out, it's incredible. Like I love everything that's happened in the last 6 months in terms of my profession. Like now, of course, because of NDAs, I don't get to say much of anything,
Right.
but whatever. It's just so cool. It's like the world was waiting for me on the other side, going, you're a little late, but whatever. Come on, we got stuff to do. Come on.
That makes that the way. Now hearing that puts peace to my mind, because that's a very well thought out, very logical, and very heartfelt reason that you gave me. Is your back better now? Hopefully.
Yeah. So I have a wonderful history of injuring and rehabilitating myself. I did Taekwondo and competitive martial arts for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I have had the absolute daylights beat out of me several times over.
That'll fuck you up. Yeah.
Yeah, the best possible way. So yeah, I'm no stranger to the experience. But yeah, I'm speaking of people who have formed an incredible support network around me through the years. My dad, who also had a very, very heavy back injury when I was super young, he kind of like, he kept me afloat and through that time. And he also kind of gave me some direction about like who to talk to, what to do, and it's just kind of like that 1, 2, 3 step process of like you're doing physical therapy on yourself, you're walking, you're doing whatever it is that you need to do that day. And certainly being a lot smarter about what I do now, because apparently, nobody ever told me about this, but
You're not
like, I
invincible.
guess like we're getting older and our bodies don't behave the same way.
We're
Like,
carbon based and we age. It's incredibly strange. Who knew?
like, why did no one mention this to me? Come on.
It's like it is. I mean, trust me. Like with my parents, sometimes like they just will do stuff, and I'm like, I power lift. Why would you move that? You're in your 60s. You can just call me, and they're like, well, yeah, I'm not. And I feel like that's just what people do. They're just like, my body's fine, until they're like, my body's not fine. It's most certainly not fine.
Yeah, that is exactly what I go through on a very regular basis. I'm getting better. I'm getting to the point where we're working on some stuff around the house, and I a couple times, like in the last few weeks, mind you, have looked at the thing and gone, you know what? No.
Yeah.
There are people in this world who are far younger than me, far stronger than me, who are willing to accept the money dollars to come do this for me.
Yeah.
And then I get to just walk off, like actual walk, not limp.
Right, because yeah, exactly. There are plenty of people out there whose discs are not herniated or previously herniated, and like maybe they should handle this, and I'll stick to the arts.
Yeah, and in Whoville they say his wisdom increased by 1 point that day.
Mm-hmm. And they say a lot in Whoville, so you gotta.
Yeah, they be talking.
There's a lot of gossip. But so that, I mean, well, that's wonderful. So I feel like we've hit some points that I wanted to. Is there anything that you want to bring up as well? I mean, I think what we'll end up doing is just doing a two-parter, because I like it, and that's how it'll go. So is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
I have notes up on my screen. I'm just kind of like scrolling through them real quick. I think the one thing, like I have a couple like super short stories that I would love to share, just because they mean so much to me, and I think they might mean something to other people as well.
All right.
One of the really cool things, it's talking about like respect and trust, and having these moments where people feel okay being vulnerable around each other, and it is a very special time when you can kind of be around people that you admire, and you suddenly find yourself having these incredibly normal conversations with. Sandra Everingham, ever heard of?
I have I have an agreement to an interview eventually, when she is able to do so. So I'm excited about that one.
She was my boss.
Really?
For about a year. Yeah.
And so that's synchronicity, isn't it?
I'll do you one better. Check this out. So not many people know this, but I am a cosplayer. I don't cosplay often, but when I do, I have put in 2 or 3, maybe 3, we'll say 3, appearances at various magic fests as Dark Ritual, like the actual full card on a little roller cart with a big bro dressed in the big black cloak, with the book, with the hand, all the things.
I want pictures.
Boy,
I want
what's
pictures.
that?
Pictures. I want pictures.
Just Google Dark Ritual GP Seattle or something like that.
I want
like
exclusive pictures. You got to give me some that's not been seen anymore. That's what I need.
I mean, I will gladly throw on the cloak for you, and we can make that happen.
I couldn't ask for a better sentence than that.
I love to please, and so I'm wandering around OG Dark Ritual, right? And as I'm wandering around, by the way, I had such an amazing time because I didn't talk the whole time. Like I've got the full black cover face mask on, everything. You can't see my face. You can't see who I am, nothing like that. And the love, like people were vaulting, vendors were vaulting their own tables to come take a picture with me. And I'm like, if in my head, I'm like, if you just wait like 2 minutes, I'll come around to you. Like, no, they're like, oh my God, it's the thing.
Well, because to them, you're a star walking down the red carpet.
Right. And that to me, that is one of the, I mean, I know so many people before me have said it, but it's still true, is like the thing that makes this game great is the connectivity. It's having those moments where, you know, you're having a good day. You're at a Grand Prix, you're at a Magic Fest, and suddenly this dude walks by, and it's your card. It is the card. Only it's like, it's huge. Like I think the actual card is like 3 or 4 feet tall or something like that. It's ridiculous. It's like it's even bigger than the normal oversized Magic cards. And you're like, I need a picture of me in the frame with the guy. And they do, and it's wonderful. So I'm making the rounds, and I go by, I think it was RK Post, and he's like, oh dude, he goes, hang on. He stands up, pulls out his phone. I figure he wants his picture with me. He goes, Sandra's gonna love this. Click. Fast forward some number of months, and I am being introduced to Sandra as my new boss. And I got to have the moment of, hello, it's nice to meet you. I'm a big fan. Do you remember some number of months ago getting a text from your buddy about somebody dressed a dark ritual? Hi.
Wow, what was her reaction?
Oh, she loves that. When you get a chance to interview her, like for sure.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like bring that up. Like that is one of her favorite stories. And she and I became fast friends. And it was so cool though, because like one of my great loves of Magic is the old school, like the original art and stuff like that. You know, I wrote a lot of my Art Hero articles about Drew Tucker, Mark Poole, Richard King Ferguson, all of these incredible people that I've actually met and I've studied with, and I've become friends with. I studied painting with Drew Tucker for a few months. Oh my God.
Surreal. That's surreal.
Yeah, it totally is. Mark Poole, an incredible artist, and also one of the most important people that I talked to at an art convention one year, because he basically asked me the perfect question at the perfect time. I was showing my portfolio around. This was after my epiphany about becoming a graphic designer. So I'd been walking around this traditional illustration art convention, showing whoever would look at my portfolio, like, what do you think about this? And everybody who looked at it, they were like, this is sweet. I've never seen anything like this, but like, where do you think this is going to be applied? I'm like, I don't know, but I just want to do it. And I want to know if you think this is a good idea, because that's the point of my life I was at. And I go over to Mark's booth, and I got a couple minutes with him. He and I knew each other at that point. And again, he's like, this is sweet. Like, and he looked me in the eye, and he just asked me, he's like, where are you taking this? Why are you doing this? No chance to think. I just blurted out this like insane sentence of words where I was just like, I want to help people understand. And I can't think of anything at all that is more important than the feeling that I get when I play these games. I want to help other people understand that feeling. And he just kind of nodded his head. He's like, that's good. That's real good. And I had that moment. I was like, oh my God, what did I just say? But then I thought about it, and I'm like, what did I just say? Like, I just kind of like had this like life-defining moment. because I just had this perfect question asked of me of a good friend. And yeah, like it's those cool points of connection. It's those cool little points of vulnerability, of trust, of friendship, of everything that goes into this. That is the going to be super corny for 2 seconds. That's the magic. That is it.
Not corny. I mean, I think that those aspects are what make you very likable. I mean, the talents aside, you do not come across as somebody who is, tooting their own horn, or conversely calling themselves, like depreciating themselves like too much. You just have a very humble mix that goes well with the skill set.
Thank you. Yeah, I do try to not be overly self-deprecating, because
it's never a good thing. I noticed, I mean, it's such an easy sort of thing to do, sort of the way that people do not take compliments well. They, and which, you should really, when somebody gives you a compliment, the thing you're supposed to say is thank you. But people will say things like, oh, it wasn't me, it was them, or oh, this is just a beautiful sweater that I'm wearing, and you're shooting down the person giving you the compliment. It's sort of the same thing when you depreciate yourself, because unless you truly believe what you're saying is true, then you're just being disingenuous.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think the real danger of that mentality is that once you say it enough times, it becomes real.
Yeah, it's sort of the reverse fake it till you make it kind of thing going on.
Yeah, gaslighting yourself, like that's super real.
The only thing I light myself of is farts, like that's healthy. Like, I think. Yeah. It's where I get my inspiration from. I'm not kidding, of course. I haven't lit any farts today. A few minutes ago.
No. Why are you doing this?
Why am I doing this? Well, because when I started playing in 2019, and I just became like blown out by the artwork. I mean, it was discovering like this incredible, like, and by 2019 we're talking like a huge amount of stuff to take in. And I'm going online. I'm like, are there documentaries about this? Is somebody doing a documentary about the artists? Is somebody doing stories about the creations of the art? Where is the journalism here? And I didn't see it. Other than, I mean, there were people like Sam from Ristic Studies who they do incredible work, but I didn't see so much of a focus on like sort of the machinations behind the creation of the game and how many different things go into it. And I thought, I'd like to see that. And so I was playing Magic one night with a friend of mine who is now he's my editor. And he was, we're sitting there hanging out, and he goes, have you ever thought of doing a YouTube channel? He was just talking to me, and I was like, now that you mention it. And so that's how it happened. And we started it a year ago, and I love it. And he loves it. And it seems to be that since we're both loving it, we're just going to continue doing it. But yeah, I just was filling a void that I personally, as a fan, wanted to see filled.
That's awesome. Like that is how it all comes together, right? Like you're answering, you've identified and you're answering the call. Like that's awesome.
It's, and it's something that I think that the game deserves, because this is not a flash in the pan. Obviously 30 years but now it's reaching a point where legacies are starting to form around it. And there's going to come a time when people who were involved with the creation of the game, in about 20 years, 30 years, may not be around. And there's already people who, breaks my heart that I haven't got a chance to talk to them before they left the planet. But this is important to me from an archival standpoint. Like, maybe someday somebody wants to write a book. And if they do, then hopefully what I'm doing maybe helps with their research. That's my stance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I will recommend a couple names for you.
Please do.
I think that there are a number of people who are still with the company. I mean, regardless of whether they are still, but regardless, Don Mirren
I want to talk to her so bad. She followed me on Instagram, and I was like, yee. So, but I've reached out a couple of times. I haven't heard back, but that's never stopped me. Like, I know people are busy, and I don't take offense to anything.
Okay. Yeah. She is, I would say, easily one of the best art directors I've ever worked with.
I definitely want to talk to her. She's definitely on my like my bucket list of people who I mean, I don't know why it is, but you notice certain names, and just because when you see them popping up in
again and again and again and again,
and you're just like, I can't not ignore those names. And because I am the English master's kind of dorky, I read everything. I was the kid when I was little that was reading the entirety of the liner notes of every album I got, including like copyright and yada yada. That's just who I am. So I pick up these names and I'm like, okay. And she was one of them where I just, her name was connected to incredible sets, and you can't ignore that.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's been with the company for quite some time. She has had lots of experience working on multiple IPs that Wizards has been connected with through the years. And like I said, she is like one of the most talented art directors I've ever worked with. Her eye for detail is like otherworldly.
Or if you can put in the good word for me, I definitely would love to speak with her. With pretty much every art director there and that has ever been, I want to talk to everybody except for there's maybe two people that I'm not really interested in. They will remain nameless, but for the most part, I want to talk to everybody.
You should see if you can talk to some of the production people then, because they are. What's that?
I would love that. It's just, it's such a huge amount of names that it's very hard to even navigate who I want to talk to. Or there may be people who I want to talk to who I'm not even aware exist because they're, part of the behind the scenes. And I can't just call up Wizards and say, tell me exactly how you run your company down to the, that's not going to happen. So I'd love it if it did. But so any sort of names and suggestions, I'm open to all of them.
If you do a little bit of research or a little bit of searching, there is a interview with a guy named Jefferson Dunlap, who has been with the company for a very, very long time and
I know the name.
Yeah. He is. I get a feeling you two would get on like super, super well. He is one of my favorite people from that area, just because he's just he is 150% himself every single day, and he's just an absolute joy to talk to, and he's got loads of stories and experience, and he's got a wicked sense of humor and a fabulous taste in dress. Like the dude wears top hats. Like he just wins everything.
That is something that not everybody can pull off.
Yeah.
A top hat. I would look like it would be a nightmarish thing to behold. I can't pull off a top hat, but good for people who can.
Yes, sir. I'll send out a couple emails and just see if there's some people that I can find, because I
would love it.
I'm thinking of even the logistics coordinators that work on this stuff, some of the miracles, actual one down, two to go level miracles that were worked just in the last few years, just to the entire world is shutting down due to quarantine.
Yeah.
How do you ship a major Magic the Gathering expansion set doing that?
And break records as you're doing it.
That literally, that whole story could probably be told with the Mission Impossible theme running in the background on loop. It is ridiculous. And I don't even know all of it. That to me is that is of all of the unsung heroes of Magic. If you just start strangely where the art stops and move past that into all of the people that need to knit it together into something that makes sense. And
imagine
and
how much we don't know what's happening to you know, and you can't know that, but there is, I'm fascinated by that. So absolutely, I don't, and the thing about it is that while there are the people who are the stars of the game in a sense that they're front and center with like maybe art, or maybe front and center with being with the company for a long time, that just to me does not make them any more or less interesting than the person who is behind the scenes that we don't know of. I think both have viable stories to tell.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They're super cool people too, and they're all like again like thinking of like my friends and stuff. Like I do miss them. Like I miss all of them, and I miss like just the cool little conversations, the cool little moments that we always got to share. Like that was, you know, like I worked with the president of the Millennium Falcon fan club.
Really?
He's a typesetter.
That's so cool, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's super cool.
You don't get to say that too often in life, right?
Exactly. It's so good, and you know, it's like you hear that and you process it, and you just have this moment, because I remember him telling me that, and I'm like, wow, yeah, he does have a lot of Millennium Falcon stuff at his desk, doesn't he? And he's always wearing shirts. Sweet.
Yeah, you're like, I thought that maybe just thought you were like just maybe a regular
Star Wars fan, right? Like, that's no big deal, but no, it is. It's a very big deal.
Yeah, there's a reason behind this, it seems.
Yeah.
That's
stuff
great.
like that. Like it's so cool.
Well, I get a sense from you that you appreciate everything that you've experienced, and that's what makes you a very wonderful person to talk to. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I think this has been very good for both of us. I really like this.
Bye bye.